right, everybody, we are back. This is Creativity is the Cure. I'm your host, Malcolm Moore, and today I have my friend Mark Plati. How you doing, Mark?
Good. How are you today?
I'm good. I am out here in the desert in California, in Palmdale. Where are you speaking to us from?
From New York City, from the heart of the East Village in Manhattan, yes.
Now, I think you know that I grew up in Rochester, New York, so tell me, how is the weather today? What do you guys got?
It's okay. Actually, it's a little warmer than usual. I think it's up around 48 degrees,
Ooh.
and that's been nice to I'm back in a dungaree jacket and bike shorts for a minute or two until we go back under it. And it's overcast, but it's okay. It's not raining. No complaints whatsoever.
Hey, that's pretty toasty for New York City as far as I'm concerned.
That's fine for right now. Last week was a different story, but I'll go with it today.
Yeah, our younger son, Caleb, he lives in Rochester, New York, and I was complaining that it was like 30. He's like, Dad, it's 15 here.
That's Rochester, though. That's like no. That's we're we might as well be Miami. I mean, you get the whole lake effect thing up there. It's like that can be pretty diabolical, man.
Well, so everybody knows out there, Mark Plati is a musician, producer, engineer, and live MD, which we will get into later. But the way we know each other, I was trying to figure out what year this is. I think 10, 15 years ago, when I lived in Rochester, I was working up in Woodstock, and I went to hang out with my friend Gerry Marotta at Dreamland Studios, and he's like, hey, Mark Plati's here. And I remember walking into the kitchen, and you and I had coffee, and that's how we met.
That's right. That's at Dreamland, right?
Yeah, and I think you were producing Axell Red. Is that right?
That's right. So that's about 2009.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
I wasn't too far off. And how did that album turn out? Pretty well?
It turned out pretty well, and I ended up doing another album with her, and then I ended up mixing a live acoustic record. Yeah, I ended up doing a few things with her after that. So that was a good experience, though, up there at Dreamland, I have to say.
It is one of the most beautiful studios I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I was a minister, and it was fascinating to find out from Gerry that the great writer Thomas Merton wrote a lot of his work there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a very historic place. And I was curious, so when you recorded the Axell Red project, did you do the whole thing there, or did you come in there for live drums or something like that? Because I know they have a beautiful room.
We recorded everything there, but then I mixed it somewhere else. But I think we did some additional overdubs somewhere else. But I don't know, 90% of it was done that room. Yeah, because we were staying there as well. Oh, I just remembered something very interesting about Dreamland was that I would wake up and there would be ladybugs in the bed.
That's very New York.
But ladybugs.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
And it's funny because I was completely okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're ladybugs. Okay, not a problem. I mean, if they'd been like cockroaches or something, yeah. I'd be getting a flamethrower or whatnot. But ladybugs, they're cool. They're
Yeah, man.
And I don't know where are they coming from. I mean, I guess they're trying to stay warm, but that's a really odd little occurrence that only happened to me only time in my life at Dreamland.
Yeah, when our kids, we have two boys, and when we were younger, we lived in Fairport, New York. And I remember on our porch, certain times of the year, that just the ladybugs would just, explode, the little population. And it was really beautiful, like you said. On any day, I would pick ladybugs over cockroaches.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I first moved to California in 2013, I very briefly worked at a guitar center. And I've told a lot of my friends this story because I was brand new to California. So I sold a drum set. They told me where the warehouse was. I went to go get the drum set, and I noticed that the box was open, and I opened it, and tons of cockroaches came out. And I was absolutely freaked out because I grew up in Rochester where cockroaches are tiny. So I went to tell the manager, and I was like, oh, my God, there's cockroaches in the drum set box. We better do something about this. And he just pauses, and he looks at me, and he goes, oh, so you met the family.
Wow.
Yeah, that's perspective. And I think we'll leave that story right there.
There, yeah. I don't even know how to follow that up.
So I also was thinking today we have some mutual friends. You just did some shows with a very good friend of mine, Tony Levin. How did those go?
I did. Oh, that was a joy. Yeah, he joined us this year. We do this little annual um, run of shows at this place called the Cutting Room in New York City. We've been
Yeah.
doing it for, oh, God, almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's a pretty consistent lineup, but we seem to have trouble holding on to a bass player.
No, wait a second. I was going to ask you. I saw that it was you, Tony, and Gail and Dorsey. How did you guys divvy up the bass parts?
Well, I'm one of the guitar players.
Yeah.
I split it with Gerry Leonard. I started this thing on bass.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I was the bass player at the beginning, and then I moved to guitar. Just I think 1 year, I forget why. And then Tim LaFave was playing bass, but Tim's busy, and then we had Carmine, and then Carmine was busy, and Gail just pretty much wants to sing. So I don't know.
It must have been cool because some of the album the next day, Gail is singing and Tony's playing the stick. That must have been cool to be able to do stuff like that.
Yeah, it was he was just a really great presence to have around, all music aside, and he took amazing photos.
Oh my God, I was just looking at those. They're beautiful.
Did you see that? What an unexpected little, added bonus to the whole thing. Like, whoa,
Well, if you know Tony well, he's an astounding photographer. I'm in my studio right now, and I'm looking at 3 of his books. So if anybody doesn't know, check out his photography books. They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So we have one more person in common. When I first moved out here in 2013, I became a teacher, and we did a lot of fundraisers, and we would do these big music shows. And one of the artists I performed with quite a bit was Chris Seefried. And I looked up and found out that you had a band with him, right?
I was, for a minute, I was in one of his bands when he was starting out. But before that, I met him. Oh, my God, I can't even. I'm trying to pin a number on the year. I'm going to say I met him around 1988.
Wow.
When he was an artist, and he was connected to this production team that it's coming back to me. This stuff, it's funny, man. Stuff, it's going on like 35, 40 years ago, and it just doesn't seem like it. But then it seems like it. Like, oh man,
right?
He was, and I used to engineer some of the stuff they were working on.
Was that for God's Child? Was that the band?
And that was before God's Child.
Oh, before. Wow.
God's Child was the band, and I was like the original bass player, I guess. I did a few gigs with them, and that was really fun. Actually, way back in it's like the mid '90s, I guess by then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I've known him a long time. They used to live in New York.
Before we go really deep into your career, I'd like to go way back in time to when you were a very young boy. Are you ready, Mr. Mark Plati?
Oh, yeah. Always up for the time machine.
All right, so I know you're an amazing musician, engineer, producer, MD, all this stuff, but what was your first creative memory? It could have been anything, like drawing or building something. When was the first time that you thought of an idea, executed it, brought it to the physical realm, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Oh, I made that.
Well, purely creating something, I guess. Probably Legos. I used to love Legos and making all kinds of crazy stuff from Legos.
Wow. Back when they were just little bricks, right?
Yeah, totally. I used to make all kinds of stuff. But more on the artistic front, it was definitely drawing. I used to love to draw. And then at one point, my parents used to read Life magazine.
Oh, yeah.
And they used to have these little ads in them for, like, I guess, little art schools or whatever, and say, and the little audition for that would be like, draw Binky the deer or something.
I do remember these.
Deer. Remember these?
Yeah, I'm only a little bit younger than you, so I completely remember this.
And I used to whip those out. I was like, cool, and then kind of like, go a little off on it and give the deer like 5 legs. I don't know. It was just really funny. I had no, of course, like, I don't know. I had no intention of going to art school as a, 6-year-old or 8-year-old or whatever, but I used to love doing those things.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the first thing, was drawing and and doing pictures and things.
What was your medium though? Did you like pencil or pen or crayon? What did you use?
I think mostly pencil, and
Yeah.
and then I got into doing painting and stuff for a while
What
too.
kind of painting? Like watercolor or oil or pastel?
Oh God, I'm gonna say, like, what do we have in school? Like you know, what they used to call that, tempera paints,
Oh yeah, I remember
and
that.
then sometimes acrylic.
Yep.
Like I remember taking a summer art class when I was a kid, but that was totally abstract stuff. That
Yeah.
wasn't like trying to cop an image. That was just like making whatever you want. I can't remember what I did with any of those things.
When you ripped out those ads from Life, did you ever enter? Because I remember sometimes they had like a contest.
No, no, I never did actually. I just was kind of into drawing the thing, or
You did it for
you
the
know,
sake of art. That's beautiful.
yeah, just for like, I want to draw it and see. And one time, then, well, later on, I got the White Album. And
Ooh.
this is after I'd even started being, I was a musician by this point. I
Yeah.
got the White Album. I was maybe 12 or something. And when you got the White Album at that time, you got the 4 portraits of the Beatles,
Right.
right? And I drew them all. I
Wow.
was just like, oh, I can draw these. These are cool. They're big enough for me to really get like the
Yeah.
details. And so I was into that. And then I don't know what I did with those either, but it wasn't like I didn't have any goal.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm going to go sell them, when I sell lemonade or something. It wasn't nothing like that. I had no, thoughts of commerce or, putting them somehow, channeling them into my future career. I just like doing it.
Yeah.
So,
No delusions of grandeur yet.
no delusions yet. Yeah, that was pre-delusionary.
So how about music? I know you're a great guitar and bass player. I'm not sure about your keyboard playing or drumming. What instrument did you start on?
I started on drums.
Really? Because I'm a drummer. That's so cool.
I was in 4th grade, and I think a friend of mine was in the school band,
Yeah.
and he played snare drum, and I was like, oh, that looks cool.
Right.
So I think my mother got me a snare drum from J.C. Penney.
That was kind of a normal thing back then, I remember.
Kind of a normal. Well, some kid had a Ludwig snare, and we were all jealous of this kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And I don't know. I just really took to it, and before I knew it, I was the first snare drum in the school band. I just liked playing, and
Yeah.
once I started really getting, I started to just get into it and go home and like play along with stuff on the radio.
Just on your snare drum, or did you have a drum set?
Yeah, just on my snare drum.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just like really into it, like, picking up on little patterns and beats and stuff. And I used to make them all crazy because, I'd be sitting at the dinner table and banging out patterns with my hands, on the table. And they'd be like, we have enough of that. Like, but I was just so gripped by the whole thing. I think I got a hi-hat like the following year or something.
Yeah.
And then that was a big step up. But then there was a life-changing thing where I moved to New York.
Okay.
My family moved to New York. I was 10.
And where were you moving from?
From Denver, Colorado.
Ooh, that's a big change.
That's a big change, and culturally too, because we moved into early 70s New York City area. Not in the city. We were in Westchester, just north of the city, but
Right.
Early 1970s urban music milieu, big mix of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Which for young, budding musical people, this was ideal. I mean, I've discussed this with with Gail and with Sterling. We're all of the same kind of ilk of like, we all musically came of age in this stew, of rock and funk and Led Zeppelin versus, Joni Mitchell versus, Stevie Wonder, and it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And, and just to have that thrown at you, like that's your classroom. that was really unique at the time, unique for any time. Like we kind of, in retrospect, we kind of benefited from all that happened in the 60s.
Right.
But, before the industry figured out, how to like narrowcast it and,
Right.
program radio stations and all that kind of whatever. So I think we were a very lucky little window of time there. But what also happened was that I met a music teacher in my first year. He was a teacher in my district. His name was William Ellington. He was a cousin of Duke Ellington.
Wow. Really? This is in New York?
This is in New York. And my first summer, I decided to take drum lessons, like drum set drum lessons.
Yeah.
Which I did with him, and it was great. But his whole thing was he would have you and students play together and improvise and just, like play together.
Yeah.
Like people, and he would play piano, I'd play drums, and he had this other student who was playing electric bass.
Ooh.
And we would like play songs together.
Yeah.
And I would just kept looking at this bass like, what is that? What is that thing? It looks like a guitar, but it's not. It doesn't sound like a guitar, but it's like earthy and whatever. And
yeah.
I was pretty taken with it, so much so that the next summer I took both drums and bass.
Wow. You were the rhythm section all by yourself.
Yeah, just to learn that. And that was kind of it. that was the die was kind of cast right there.
Yeah.
Like, all right, this is where, I didn't really know that, but, retracing your steps, you go, okay, that was sort of the end of the story there. Then I knew kind of, even though I didn't acknowledge it, I kind of knew where I was going to end up.
Yeah, and looking back at all the work that you've done that I admire, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know you were a drummer until I was doing research yesterday, and I love the drum sounds that you have produced. They're just incredible and unique.
Oh, thank you. Well, drums is a really good place to start because you get your rhythm together first.
Yeah.
And learn how to read music just purely rhythmic.
Right.
And learn how to, all the crazy configurations of 16th notes under the sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Subdividing.
I already knew how to do that before I got on a melodic instrument.
Right. I mean, there's
Right?
so
So
many great artists like how Jaco Pastorius started on drums, which I think,
sense,
in
right?
the same way made him an incredible bass player, especially rhythmically when he was doing all those 16th notes.
Right. Yeah, you just get conscious of, it's like rhythm becomes secondary.
Yeah.
And that to me felt like a really, I had a real good advantage in that sort of department, which, I've been kind of realizing is why I ended up being the sort of player that I am, was I had this real grounding in rhythm that I was really very attached to and attracted to. And even so much the other day, like these series of gigs I did with Tony Levin. And I'm primarily being a rhythm guitarist.
Right.
And to just lock in with Tony and our drummer, Brian Delaney, I mean, it's as satisfying now as it was when I was 15 or so. Just that kind of thing really, it matters to me. I like being sort of that part of the, in the engine room and let the others like spread the fairy dust on top. I like doing a little fairy dust myself too, but, I really like when a piece of music feels good.
Yeah, and I think it's really fascinating that you started out as a drummer because you have solid time, you have a really good groove. So when you're doing some of the stuff that you did with Bowie and you're locking down the bass part and Zachary Alford is just playing around you, like splattering stuff here and there. When you guys are doing the drum and bass, it takes the guitar player and the bass player to really lock it down because those rhythms you guys did were just wild.
Well, to correct you on that, that's actually Gail playing bass on that record with Zach. I'm the programmer, and I had to basically make all that work.
Right. And I wanted to ask you about that, but I'm talking more live. So when you played with the band live and you did that, Was that was Gail on bass and you were on guitar?
Yeah, most of the time. Sometimes I'd play bass live back then. Yeah, there's a whole story about how we started doing Ashes to Ashes,
Right.
a complete completely by chance. It just kind of came up, but then Gail didn't really want to do it because it was slapping, and she didn't like slapping at the time. It's like, all right, well, I'll do it, and so I did that, and then there was eventually, okay, and then we're circling back around again, where on a following tour, I played fretless on one song, where I had to sort of recreate a part on a Bowie song that Tony Levin had played.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, going a whole
Wait, was that
circle thing
Slip
here.
Away?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. God, that's a beautiful part.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think I told Tony the other day, yeah, I had to copy your, because we started talking about instruments, and I said, yeah, I have a '79 Music Man fretless bass. He's like, whoa, that's pre-Ernie Ball. I'm like, yes, it is, because it always boils down to geek speak, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
All this stuff,
So it sounds like with the live Bowie shows that you did, whenever something bizarre would come up, they're like, everybody might be like, I don't know about that. And then you're probably like, I'll do it. You were just kind of the glue that would do all the challenging things that maybe people didn't want to go near.
There was some of that, but for the most part, I was a guitar player. But I was, definitely more of a foundational guitar player in that way. I mean, I took liberties like anybody would, but that was pretty much my role in that band, though I did have to, there were other things that had to be done that could definitely be put in that light, where we just discussed this the other night at the show, because we would tell little stories, and
Yeah.
I remembered, David called me up and he said, well, I think I want to play the entire Heathen album on this upcoming tour. Oh, and I also want to play the entire Low album. Can we do that?
No
Great.
pressure.
Yeah. And I was like, well, okay. And then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Side 2 of Low is like, what's going on there? That's like the whole electronic experimental side. And how am I going to represent that?
Yeah, and I'm even thinking of Heathen. There's so many ethereal, bizarre stuff on there, like the David Torn guitar parts. So you couldn't pick two more completely different albums. What was it like when you were his MD and you're playing guitar and bass and you're making sure the band's together, and then for an album like Earthling, where the rhythms and the programming are insane, how did you compartmentalize your brain on stage? Because you probably had more of a complete view than anybody up there, maybe other than David, because you knew the inner workings of these albums.
I suppose my philosophy in that context is that I always make sure I'm the weakest link.
Okay.
Always. Because if I'm the weakest link, we're okay.
Yeah.
And I get, and you brought up David Torn, right? Like, well, how's that going to happen? Oh, get Gerry Leonard.
Gerry Leonard, yeah.
Right? Easy. Hey, Gerry, there's part here, this, blah, blah, blah. You just make a map of it for him, and it's like, okay, you're off, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of how I had to approach those two records. I'd get the multi-tracks and listen to what's going on here, there, and whatever.
Right.
And okay, this guitar, this is a good part for Earl Slick, right?
Yeah.
And then lots of different keyboard stuff. But in terms of bringing those records to life, then yeah, I'd be kind of the guy that would do the weird thing that wasn't covered.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, there's an oddball keyboard part. I'll do that, right? I'll cover that because. So in that case, in those instances, yeah, I was definitely covering some of the funkier bits that we just needed to be covered, but I already had others doing things that were more in their wheelhouse.
Right. Did anybody have to play the stylophone, or did you guys just sample that?
Actually, David played the stylophone.
Really? Really?
Yes, he did. Oh, he loved it.
I right now I teach high school students, and I love to bring the
Right.
stylophone in. They go crazy. They're like, what is
Yeah.
that?
It's a very useful little tool, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's all these new versions.
Yeah.
There's even a David Bowie signature version of the stylophone.
There is. I've seen it, yes.
So crazy. How about your parents? Were they creative when you were growing up? And do you ever find yourself going, "Oh, I got this from my mom," or "I got this from my dad"?
Well, see, you mean like creative or artistic or
Yeah, in any
um
way, do you find aspects of your personality that you realized that you got from either your parents, or was it a creative environment? What was it like?
well, I wouldn't say it was creativity wasn't discouraged
Yeah.
uh by any stretch. It wasn't like, yeah, like if I was to go back to the Lego, you know, thing,
Yeah.
it wasn't like anybody would say, "Oh, that's wrong," you know, or say, "Oh, you should do it like." There was none of that. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
there wasn't any of that kind of thing. Actually, I just thought of something now. Like when we were little kids, uh, my parents would let us write all over the furniture and all over the walls with crayon.
Oh my God, they're cool. That's crazy.
Yeah, they would just let us kind of go. And I remember when I was a teenager, my mother had a little, side project of sort of refinishing all of that furniture, in a more grown-up context. But and I'm wondering if that, because my mother was like a first grade teacher, and I'm wondering if
Oh,
that came from her sense of like, well, let the kids express
yeah.
themselves, right?
The
Like,
art of play.
so
Wow.
yeah, exactly. And it was, I just remember like we should write all over the furniture, and it was, and I could think of like that wouldn't have gone on in my friend's house. Their friends' houses, that would not have happened, especially at that time where, parental discipline could be pretty intense,
Oh yeah.
for
Yeah.
in those days, corporal
Wow.
punishment and all.
Here's a kind of a serious question. Do you think creativity could be implemented in curing people, or at least helping people with mental health struggles like depression, anxiety? What has your experience been about seeing how art and music help people?
Oh, I think it's tremendously helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's gee, the other day I even said, because it's a very little tough, dark time in the world, at the
A little
moment.
bit.
And
Yeah.
if you hadn't noticed that, and we did this series of shows, and some people were just in tears.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
like, we needed this, we needed, this feeling of coming together and just music and how healing that is. And I said, well, we're not curing cancer, but maybe in some small way, we're helping prevent it, and I'll take that.
Yeah. I mean, one
I'll
day at a
take that.
time. And, it's
Yeah,
all over the internet, that meme of David Bowie that the world has gone to shit since he died. And in some ways,
it's kind of you seem to kind of nail that, right? Like I'd say, but also I think being creative, whether it's writing music or coming up with a part or producing something,
yeah.
it's just healthy. It keeps your mind
Yeah.
functioning and moving forward, and your I don't know, and I think that even affects your body. I mean, we were talking the other night, like a lot of us are in, our early late 50s, early 60s. Tony was older than us,
He's turning
right?
80 this
Tony
year.
Levin.
Yeah.
And we couldn't believe that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We can't. You can't be 80. No, no, can't be. But this, I think that's how it works. I think music and having to keep on your toes and always come up with new and interesting things to do and rising to the occasion, and finding a cool musical part or playing together with people and sharing that experience. I just think it keeps you physically young.
Yeah, these are all good things.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back in time a little bit to your younger part of your career. And speaking of nerdy equipment talk, so it looks to me like you started working in studios in the late 80s. I think you worked on Prince's Graffiti Bridge, right?
Yes, I did.
So I'm curious. I want to know what type of gear you were using back then, because I'm a music teacher at a high school, and these kids are all making their music on a laptop and stuff. And I'm trying to explain to them what it was like when you used to have to, connect things and do the quantize and use MIDI chords. Like, so what was your setup? Let's go back to around the time when you were working with Prince and all these other artists.
You mean getting all these things to speak to each other?
Yes. Explain.
Oh, yeah. That was a whole little science project unto itself.
Tell me a little bit. Give us a glimpse.
Well, to go back a little further from before Prince, when I moved to the city after going to college and doing an internship, I moved to New York City proper looking for a job as, rock and roll engineer or bass player. Yeah. That was my goal. But all the places that would have a rock and roll engineer either wouldn't take me or wanted me, and if they were going to take me, they wanted me to be, to go through their program, which meant like being a general assistant for a year, which meant, getting coffee and all that kind of stuff, whatever. And I almost got a gig at the Hit Factory.
Okay.
But then they called me and said, well, we don't think you're Hit Factory material. And I'm thinking, what, I can't fetch coffee?
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who I think I am? I can't fetch coffee? Really? So then I started to go to second-tier studios, and I ended up getting a gig as an assistant straight out the bat at Arthur Baker's Shakedown Sound.
Okay.
And Arthur Baker was a remixer, and the first piece of gear I saw when I walked into that place was this huge, giant Emulator 2.
Yes, I remember those.
Right, which was a sampler, which stored samples on what were they? Those 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. Yes. Again, this is like right. So, and there was like a hardware, the Yamaha sequencer they had. Yeah. There's no computers yet, right?
Yeah, that was a question I had. I wanted my students to know. No, this is before computers. Yet. Yeah.
This is before computers. This is just like dedicated boxes, and you'd have to pray to hope that they speak to each other, say, okay, this is controlling that, it's controlling this. Okay, good. Is there any lag in it? Whatever. And then you had analog tape, and getting things to like lock to analog tape, which was, an imperfect kind of.
Yeah. And tell them, like, if you're programming a sequencer for maybe a drum part or using a drum machine, if you get halfway through the song and you want to put a drum fill in there, you've got to plan that whole thing out and manually put that in there, right?
You've got to you really have to plan all this out. It was a whole other, I can't even, I might have blocked all that out of my mind because it was, because now it's so easy. But there was, and this was a great place to learn all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this was like doing dance remixes. I had no idea about dance music.
Right. And so everybody knows, I worked at record stores for a long time, and I remember the advent of the 12-inch remix. So there are these big records that would have like, I don't know, a remix that went on for 10 minutes. But I think people today take it's for granted on how you guys put that stuff together. So what would it be like if someone sent you a song to remix?
Okay. How you would do it would be like this. You'd get the song, get the multi-track tapes of whoever the artist was, the producer. There were a few people that did this. Arthur, there's a few other producers that would use his place because he was the place for this. You would decide what you wanted to use from the original, right?
Right.
Vocal, couple instrumental parts, whatever, signature bits. And then you would start to add sequences to that of like drum loops or drum machines, whatever. Now this is where it gets interesting because a lot of times this stuff wasn't done on a click track.
That was my next question.
Yeah, it wasn't. So we had this miracle box called an SBX80, a Roland SBX80, which was I've never seen more voodoo contained in one box in my life. Where, and if you learned how to work it, you were lucky. It was, and this thing would like, you could program a click from this if you just say mapped out different, percussion from the drummer. Like, all right, this bass drum, I use this snare, isolate these sounds, feed it in this thing. Okay, you've got a sequence. You've got a click now. Not perfect, but whatever. I even at some point, like, I would get in the booth with a cowbell and make a click. And feed that to the thing.
You made your own grid.
Okay, right. Eventually, now this was, this how you could do it, right? And then you do your little overdubs, but you wouldn't arrange it. You just you found a cool part with samples. You just run it the whole way through. Blah, 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 blah. You do all kinds of stuff, crazy keyboard parts, new bass part. And then you bring it up on the SSL, 56 input desk.
Yeah.
Right. And you automate this mix so things come in and out when you want. Right. And doing things like making reverb bombs by throwing a bass drum into a huge reverb, all kinds of stuff like this. And then you would print all these little things to a 1/2-inch tape.
Oh my gosh.
Because then this is when you'd be creative, like making things with mutes on the desk and oh, this is going to come in here, boom, boom. Oh, we cut the vocals here, boom. And then you cut all you put all this to, you're performing this mix. Okay?
Wait, so was there automated mixing yet, or were you in there with a bunch of people riding the faders?
No, at this point there was automated mixing.
Okay, good.
Right. But and then you would do these little you perform these automated mixes in the computer, print them to 1/2-inch tape, do a whole bunch more of that. Yeah. At the end of the day, you'd have 5 reels of 1/2-inch tape, and somebody would have to cut all of that together.
Oh my God.
There was special guys that did editing. Right.
The men in black, they would just come in.
Yeah, exactly. There were a couple of guys. And one of these guys, his name was Junior Vasquez, right? And eventually he started to produce stuff on his own. And I became his guy, his engineer and keyboard programmer.
Ooh, I didn't know that connection.
Oh, yes. And well, you'll see in a second where this is going, right? And by this time in 1987, there was a fantastic new invention by Akai called the S900 sampler.
Yes.
And that changed everything. And that was it was mobile. It was just, it was a unit, didn't have a keyboard, right? You just MIDI a keyboard up to the thing. And then we got into this thing of we'll just we'll sample the vocals, stick them in here and make a whole new sequence out of it. And then you could have, whatever click you want.
Right. And that's how you guys did those rhythmic hits with vocal tracks, right? Very percussive type of things.
That's one way, you could do like that. Because then once everything kind of moved into samplers, that's kind of the precursor of where it went with computers. Okay, but this was all, run on boxes as opposed to run on software.
I had a question, though, regarding the sampling. I remember when I was working at music stores in the 90s and the Roland Vera phrase came out and people were able to match pitches of samples. So if you're going to sample, James Brown, the funky drummer, or God forbid, a Queen song that actually has pitch, how did you guys match the pitch with the samples to the newer tracks that you were laying down?
That was one of my little jobs there because a lot of times they couldn't hear that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys are DJs.
Right.
Right. And they would just know something's wrong. That's not right. And I'd be the thing's playing. This note is D that he's got, and your sample is E flat or whatever. It's not going to work. Somebody's got to move one way or another. Now you could do some of that with speed, with a very speed, which was okay. At that time, what was the pitch shifter du jour? There was the Publison Infernal Machine. That was a good one for changing pitch. It was a little better than the Eventide. What did we have at that point? A 949. You'd try. Sometimes you'd have to go that route to make pitches match up. But I found that in that world, people with musical education or whatever, was lacking. So that was another little skill that I had, in addition to being able to play stuff, was like, oh, I could fix things that are pitches are wrong.
And I found also, I remember at the time when all this stuff was happening, sometimes people wouldn't match the pitch. And I'm thinking of songs like The Power by Snap. And it seemed to me that it got popular when things weren't in the same key. You know what I mean?
I think anything gets popular if you hear it enough. It's kind of, it's kind of like, you know, who is it that said, like, you know, you play it wrong once and it's a mistake, and you play it like a few times and it's a part.
It's a riff,
who said that? You know, it's, you know, I don't want to say it's Miles Davis, but it's somebody of that ilk that's just like, you know, if you're committed, they'll get on the bus, you know.
I heard today a remix you did of one of my favorite Talking Head songs, Blind. Is this the same era, and you did it the same way?
Same era. Yeah. Same way, same era. Exactly. That's Arthur. That's Arthur Baker.
That must have been fun. Those were really good tracks.
Yeah, that was great, actually. That was a good one.
I mean, that album has people like Johnny Marr on it, so you must have had a lot of cool stuff to work with.
I don't remember, because we only did one song, and I don't remember what was within that song. It was a long time ago. That was like 88, I think.
Was this when you also worked with Dream Academy? Because our mutual friend Gerry Marotta played with them, and I was curious what you did with that band.
That, again, was a remix. See, a lot of times I wouldn't even get to meet these people. Yeah. Most of the time we didn't. There was one time, I forget what we did. We did a Bee Gees remix.
Yeah, I saw that. Wow.
And that was cool because Arif Mardin came for that.
Wow.
He came to visit and check it out.
That must have been exciting.
And he was the coolest, you know. That's the thing. You'd meet some of these legendary people, and some of them would just be the coolest. You know, they'd be great. You know, and you kind of, and you'd meet people like that, right?
Yeah.
And people like Bowie and a number of people like this, and you go, and that's just. I always found that really validating, that like people were doing they had these careers, you know, these really musical, creative careers, and they're just so mellow and grounded. And I thought, well, yeah, because that's, to me, how this stuff is fun. We're supposed to enjoy this, right? And the whole point is to like not have a job. Yeah. So, you know, that was always like, people like that were really great. You know, there was a few people like that. I remember we recorded this one saxophonist, Stanley Turrentine, once. It was just great. Some of the people are like just really totally down there. Actually, I told Tony Levin this story the other day, where one of the very first sessions I worked on at Arthur's studio, because he rented out to other clients, to other people. Right. And one of his other clients was Lenny White, who was the drummer in Return of Forever, right? Yeah. And he was producing something. I don't remember what he was producing, but he brought somebody in to play keyboards. And that somebody was Tony's brother, Pete.
Yeah, Pete's an incredible piano player.
And this is 1987.
Yeah.
You know, I said, this was like one of the first sessions I did. And I described it like, well, God, you know, I'm not in the game, but I'm on the bench.
You were well on your way.
Yeah, I'm on the bench, and these guys were the coolest. You know, they were just, you know, they were so into what they were doing and sharing all that. And it was like, this is, you know, wow, if this is what it is, I'm in. You know, I'm in. Yeah, I'm in. Put me in, coach. I'm in. Right. So that was an interesting, you know, again, these things tend to always fold back on each other. These, you know, these experiences. But I ended up doing a lot of work with Junior, and Junior was the avenue to Prince. Right. Because Prince heard some of the stuff we were doing, and he wanted us to add some of that to his upcoming album. Yeah. And this was a storybook telephone call I got one day.
Tell me.
where I get a call and say, can you get on a plane and go to Paisley Park like tomorrow?
And you're like,
Right?
let me check my schedule.
It's like, is that the rhetorical question of the century?
And
Well, yeah. And then I was, all of a sudden, and that was a dream. Like, oh, is this a dream? Is this real? This is really happening? And, I'm going to Paisley Park.
and that studio was pretty new at that point.
He'd been there a few years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, this is 1990.
Right.
And he'd been there a few years, and it was amazing. It was, first of all, huge recording studio.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Big. I forget how big his desk was. It was massive. And we had all of our little toys there. But not only that, he had a whole sound stage for rehearsing.
Amazing.
There was a Studio B where they were also recording things. And he was also editing his movie there at the same time. So
Ooh.
that was another thing, was like we were witnessing like the Prince work ethic in full flow.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he's working with us on mixes, he's rehearsing, and he's editing the film all at the same time.
A little bit of multitasking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, but this is the stuff you used to read about, like, and this guy doesn't ever sleep, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, there you go, it's true.
Wow. And can you tell me, from working with him, what's one thing that you learned that you carried with you even today?
I don't know. I think I didn't know what I was expecting to happen when I went there,
Right.
but I just went there and did my thing,
Yeah.
and it was fine.
Yeah.
I just went there and I was myself and did what I usually do, and it was cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, wow, well, I'm going to work with like one of the biggest superstars ever. I
Yeah.
guess, ooh, but it was just like, all right, well, just do your thing.
And he was
And
pretty
be-
cool with you and straightforward about like what he expected.
Yeah, he was fine. I mean, I've heard stories from others that have worked with him a little more closely, more intensely, and it's not quite like that.
Right.
Because I was pretty I was, more transient than that. I was only there for a few days.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, I was working for him,
Right.
like, some of the people that were on staff and things like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it wasn't the same thing. So I can't really say, but with me, he was fine. It was actually pretty cool. He was, I think he was dating Kim Basinger at the time, and they were sitting in the back just eating popcorn, and I'm sitting up there mixing, going, okay, well. There's
Wow.
a few things like that where you're in these surreal settings, like, oh, okay, and it's just, all right.
Well, I think it's good
that
that all this happened for you early on. So as you moved into bigger parts of your career, you're never really fazed by anything.
That's true, because I think that was a real test of how am I going to do in a setting with like
Right.
superstars or what have
Yeah.
you, whatever you don't want to call them. And it was fine. And, by the time I worked with David, it was completely fine. I mean, really, it was interesting. Like my relationship with David was kind of different than, say, the more old timers, because I don't know, I didn't have the experience of working with him when he was, younger, huge superstar.
Right. Right.
They viewed him like the boss, and
Yeah.
I didn't see it like that. I was just, I always felt like more of a collaborator.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, obviously he, the thing with him was David had the plan, right? He had the plan and the idea, and then he let you run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do what you do, and it was like, oh, this is great, like. And then eventually he'd have a specific idea sometimes,
Right.
for sure. Or you do something, you go, oh, maybe not quite right, and then he twisted some other way, and you go, whoa, man! Like he would do something Bowie-esque, where he would do something, you would think that ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work, right? And then an hour later, you're like, hey, wait a minute. It's like the most amazing thing ever, right?
Yeah.
So, But he was really, and I always felt like he just wanted what you brought.
Yeah.
And I've heard this from a lot of other folks that have worked with him. Like that was the thing, was he wanted what you brought, and he would also, he was very interested in where you came from and what you were bringing to this party, and
Yeah.
which made a difference to the work, when somebody's kind of valuing all of that part of you.
Yeah. Now, when I met you, you were telling me how you recorded the Earthling album, and then we stayed in touch. And I remember you played me a song that didn't come out until much later called "We Shall Go to Town." That's one of my favorite
Right.
Bowie tunes. You're on that, and it's so spooky. Can you tell me anything about the story of that song and how it fit into the recording process, and maybe why it wasn't included?
That was actually from the following record called Hours.
Yeah,
And Hours was very different than Earthling.
completely. Yeah,
Completely. It was a whole other thing. And I wasn't even involved with it at the beginning, which I didn't expect to be. I thought, well, Earthlings, that maybe that's my little Bowie experience. That's fine.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so, and of course, after doing that, I got really busy off the back of that.
Right.
So they started doing that. They, meaning David and Reeves Gabrels, they started doing that almost, in a more conventional fashion, where they're just doing kind of guitar vocal demos, and
Right.
they built up a record around it. But then they weren't happy with it, and they decided to kind of use some of it and redo some of it, and they called me to play fretless bass.
Yeah, it's such a
which
great
was
song.
totally like different. A totally different thing from being like a synth and rhythm programmer, and I said, okay, sure. And I ended up then, of course, I ended up engineering at the same time, and because I was good value for money, and we did lots of songs, and we did this song called "We Shall Go to Town," which was meant as like a bonus track.
Yeah.
But it never came out.
Not till many years later.
Yeah, it just didn't come out. And it was, God, I remember being really quick. And it's David Reeves, myself, and Sterling on drums. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's like, it wasn't live. I think it was, and it wasn't multiple takes. It was just kind of one of those things that came together quick. Oh, that's a good rhythm, and let's, and yeah, I don't know. It just was it was a really quick one, and but it turned out the way it did, and that was. I remember at the time saying that's a Bowie track.
Yeah. It's so dreamy and it's so ethereal.
That's
It's
a Bowie
just,
track.
it's
Yeah.
expansive. It's kind of haunting. The vocals, the effect you guys put on were really cool. He seemed to be really into experimental vocal effects. Would you say that's true?
Yes, very, very much so. And I remember on that particular record, he got really into a ring modulator
That's right.
on
And didn't you
vocals.
guys,
Yeah.
and you would often use them live when you perform, because I was
Yes.
always
He
shocked at how
yes.
good it sounded live.
He had a pedal board with that in it and a few other effects, and he would run it. He'd do it.
I love that.
So yeah, that was there was a period of that, sure.
You've told me the challenging story of just creating the rhythm tracks for Earthling. You're programming electronic beats, and then I think you recorded Zach playing drums, but then you chopped it up
Yes.
even more. What was that like?
That was in the very early days of. This was my first record doing it entirely in a computer.
And what kind of
Well,
computer?
not
What were you using?
well, let's say not entirely.
Yeah.
It was more or less, I was recording into it for the sake of like editing and arranging. And then when all that was cool, we were dumping it to a Sony digital multitrack,
Wow.
just because it wasn't stable enough. You couldn't get enough tracks to be stable enough to keep it all in there,
Yeah.
all the time. You had to like put it somewhere else. Because even early on, I remember we started that with just a four voice system.
Yeah.
And it was just an idea of mine, like the first time they came in. And this was a good little experience for all of us because we started writing a song and using that to arrange the song.
And what song was that?
It was it's called Earthlings on Fire.
Yeah. Yep.
That was the first one. And we just had all these different parts. And David said, well, can you take this part and make that like a verse or whatever, and make this part come after it, and then put that part again, da da da. He made a whole map of how to do it.
Yeah.
And then he's thinking in terms of like, they used to do this with tape, right?
Right.
With two machines, locking them up, syncing them up, and, offsetting them so you get one part to kind of come over, edit into a different section of the song, right?
Yeah.
And this, as you can imagine, was crazy time consuming.
Well, I can't imagine back then because I know how difficult it was to make that stuff work.
Yeah, really time consuming. And I had already done it. I did it in the computer.
Right.
Like, I need like 5 minutes. And they couldn't believe, Reeves and David just were like, whoa. And it was almost like the heavens opened or like a huge light bulb went up over his head, like, okay, here we go. And that was kind of the beginning of using the computer to arrange things. And I was in Logic. I wasn't even in Pro Tools. I was in Logic.
Wow.
Using an audio card.
And so everybody knows, what year is this that you're recording it?
96.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
And I forget what version of Logic it was. It was way before Apple.
Yeah.
Way before that.
Yeah.
And I got turned on to Logic from doing work in Europe because they were using it.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, I should try that. It looks really cool. And you can record sound in it. And it's, you can arrange it and along with MIDI. And the MIDI was very together. And this was my first, dive into computer sequencing.
Well, and I've always wanted to ask you this. So I can understand you doing that, but how did you guys do it live? How did you play these automated tracks, the programming parts that you would play live instruments to? How did you do it live? Was it computer, tape?
Yeah. You'd have to play along with loops. And when they did it live, we made tapes of like loops and stuff just to play along with. But for the recording, it was tricky because live drums are live drums and they're not, as good a time as somebody might have. It's not perfect,
Right.
And I was definitely anti-flam.
And this is before Beat Detective. So how do you fix everything?
Grouping tracks and making, and dragging and, making edits and making a ton of edits.
Wow. Oh
and you have to have a combination of a creative yet meticulous nature.
Yeah.
Because once you start this, there's no stopping until it's done. And it was quite a process. And a couple of the songs on the record, it's like, okay, well, in this spot, the live drums are dominant. I don't really need to mess with the loops. I can like mix them a little lower, right? There was something, but there were a couple songs that's like, fuck no. This has to be sorry. I didn't mean to swear to your eyes.
Oh, no, it's all good. It's all good. I would have said the same thing.
Right. There's a few of these songs where the drums and programming have to be completely seamless from the get-go until the end.
Yeah.
They have to be. And there just can't be any like slippage here.
Yeah.
It can't be like two bass drums going, can't have it. And it was just a matter of, I got to chop up the drum set a bit and make it sit exactly with programming.
But on the flip side, the cool thing is you could probably be like, I love that fill that Zach did there at the beginning, but I'm going to put it at the end.
Oh, there's that too.
Yeah.
There's like, that's the whole other part of it. It's like, well, I can take this and move it there in a half a second.
Yeah.
Oh, that made that completely easy. Those kinds, that's a whole other thing we used to have to do with like say with background vocals, you'd get a great chorus of background vocals, right?
Yeah.
Harmonies and all this. And then you would dump that to a half-inch recorder, mark it with a grease pencil, go to the next chorus, and then fly it in manually by hitting play on the half-inch. I used to love this. This was just like hot rodding or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and how good can I make it feel by just like, flying it in wild, right? So you could do it that way, or you could have if you have a synchronizer, you program in an offset, it does it automatically, right? All this stuff.
Yeah.
That's the old way of doing it. But then in a computer, as your students will display, demonstrate for you, this takes like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So that's why, and David and Reeves figured that out in about a nanosecond, like, oh, whoa, we can just move stuff around at will and anywhere, and it's going to take no time. Like, and then, that's like one of those tools, right?
Yeah.
Those and then the creativity really starts. When you can do these sorts of things unencumbered by tech, both you're enabled and at the same time, you're enabled and unencumbered by technology.
Right.
When that happens, then you're flying. Then people think of all kinds of nutty stuff to try, and myself included. Like, I think a great example of that at this time was I did a remix for David of a song called "I'm Deranged."
Love that song. Yeah, for the people out there too, it's at the end of that movie 7.
Yeah, or is it in Lost Highway?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. It is in the David Lynch film Lost Highway. You're correct.
I only know that because he showed up one day. And I'm like, oh my God, David Lynch. He just shows up. That's the thing. When you're working on a Bowie session, people just show up like, oh.
Yeah, but I bet,
hey.
from what I know about David Lynch, I bet he loved seeing your methodology and how you were doing this stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. I mean, but this particular mix was definitely I was pushing all this stuff to the max.
I love that mix, and the crazy tap delay stuff on the rhythm is so cool.
Yeah, there's at this time, and now I can't even remember how I used to do this stuff.
Well, I always wanted to ask you about. I mean, Reeves Gabrels is definitely one of my all-time favorite guitar players, and I know he's a mad professor with different textures and effects and stuff. But there's something about Earthling, the way you mixed the guitar, that it's so dry, so punchy and crunchy. How did you guys get that sound? Because I never really heard it again on any other album.
That record is entirely Roland VG8.
Oh, yeah. I've been telling my students about that. Yeah. Wow, those were amazing.
Yeah, that was a real, it's funny because Joni Mitchell was using one too.
Yeah, because it saved all her crazy tunings, right?
Yeah. And you go, wow. You get Reeves on one end and Joni on the other, both using this box, and you're thinking, man, something's up with this box.
And Adrian Belew and Andy Summers, right? They all brought something. And just so people out there know, it was a guitar synthesizer.
Yes. But it was, unlike, say, some of the ones from the 80s, right, which were definitely, that was a science project to get those to work. I mean, this was like, relatively speaking, it's like plug and play.
Yeah, I remember selling those. They were incredible.
Yeah. So that album was entirely that. Except I think there's one song that has I think there's one song that has an amp on it. Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the record for that. Then after that, it didn't come back, I don't think.
Wow.
If I'm wrong, Reeves, tell me. But I don't think it showed up in the next record.
Well, I wanted to go back a little bit more about, so when you have songs that you did, well, let's stick with Earthling. If you do any of those songs live, what happens when you've got someone like Mike Garson playing this really wild piano solo and he wants to take an extra 4 bars, but you guys already have all the tracks loaded for a specific amount of time? Is there any way that you can, if someone wants to keep doing a solo, you can elongate that before like the chorus comes back?
At that point, no.
Yeah, so you guys were just stuck with that frame.
Yeah, but they were okay with it. That was kind of the aesthetic, and they were okay with that. There wasn't, the thought of like doing sort of long improvisational things over these sorts of tracks. That wasn't really part of that.
What was it like when you recorded Earthling and then you played it for the band and it sounded completely different from the recording sessions? What was their response?
How do you mean
They
for
must have
the
been in
band?
shock because, like, especially, Zachary Alford putting his drum part down, and then he hears the finished project. It must have been really amazing for him to hear what you had done.
Oh, I think so. Sure. And Gail as well. I mean, Gail really, she really played great on that record. And that was her first real Bowie project. I mean, she'd been on tour before that with him, her first tour, but this was her first recording experience, and she just loved it. Um, Being part of that, and yeah, and sometime, yeah, actually, I remember I took samples of her vocal,
Such a good
and
singer. My God.
yeah, and put that, made a part out of just samples of her in
And then
one
she's got to learn how to
song.
do it live, right?
Uh, I guess so, right? Sorry, didn't think about, down the road, like, well, somebody's got to represent this, right? Or maybe they don't. I don't know.
Well, it's
So,
funny. I saw the outside tour when Bowie opened up for Nine Inch Nails in Cleveland. And then
right,
I didn't see Bowie again till many years later, actually, a show you did, the reality tour in Buffalo. That was an incredible show. And what a
right.
different vibe for that tour compared to the other one.
Well, everything with him was always different. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting, like this. I have this '90s box, and if you just go through that box, like every record's totally different,
Oh my gosh.
and
That's one of the best things
visually
about Bowie. Yeah.
different. Yeah, visually different, and yeah, like the Bowie first Bowie tour I did, he was a completely different animal than he was in the Earthling tour.
Yeah. Yeah.
In both approach and appearance and songs that he did. I mean, when I got in the band, he started to play some of the older hits again.
Right.
Lucky for me, it was great to play some of those tunes. But
Yeah.
because you remember, he'd stopped playing them, and he just kind of got over them, which was a really good decision on his part. Because I don't know how some of these people play songs for 50 years.
Well,
Like,
I'll never forget when I saw the show in Cleveland, the arrangement for Andy Warhol was just so bizarre. And I loved how he would
yeah,
often do an intro for a song and you'd have to guess what it was. Like Gene Genie, he'd start out doing like this old blues song and then it
right,
would slip into it. And I always loved the reveal of the older songs.
right.
So, how did you end up
No.
doing all the work in France? I look at your discography and you've done a lot of stuff there. I mean, obviously not only working with Axel Red, but tell me about how you got ensconced in that community over there.
Ah, wow, that was a long process. But I had after I worked with Prince, I got a manager in London, and his thought was like to get me producing because up to then I was just doing mixing, and I wasn't really a producer per se, and I wasn't, and dance music wasn't really my thing anyway. I got into that like accidentally, and I was really, I loved doing it, but it wasn't where I wanted to be.
Right.
I knew like I'm gonna get a lot of great experience out of this, and I did. I learned a lot of great things there, obviously, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I got this manager, and his thought was like to start producing things in Europe where, even if I screw up, no one's
Right.
gonna notice, I guess, or what have you. And they were all really happy with a credit like Prince. They were
Yeah.
all happy to
Yeah.
have me. And I met somebody at Virgin Publishing around 1992. His name was Mark Thonon at Virgin France, right?
Yeah.
And I just hit it off with him pretty straight off. And a couple of years later, he circles around with a project for me around 1990, so a year later, 1993, with an African artist called Mori Kante, who'd had a big hit in France the year before. And he wanted me to do this album. By then, he'd moved to a French label called Barclay. And I ended up doing this album. And I remember it distinctly because I had to go record in Paris 10 days after my daughter was born.
Oh my gosh.
That was quite a, just quite, for a couple of weeks or whatever. And that was something.
Yeah.
So we did that record, and then he ended up starting his own independent label, and he had a big hit there in France with a band called Louise Attack, and they sold like 2 million records in France, which was
Whoa.
unprecedented,
Good
right,
God.
for France,
Yeah.
right? And then I did a couple other little things with him in between, but then I left the Bowie camp in 2003,
Right.
and he called me and he said, "Do you want to do an album with my band, Louise Attack, on my label?" I'm like, sure. They wanted to come to Electric Lady
Yeah.
in New York,
Yeah.
where I've been working a lot of Electric Lady since around 1990, I guess. And I did that. I did a record with them there. I went to France to mix it, and that record was a hit there, and that led to loads of other stuff there. And I got on this sort of 10-year train of doing
Yeah.
loads of stuff there, and it was a fantastic experience.
Okay, I'd just like you to quickly respond to a few quotes I have here. The first one is by Prince. Technology is cool, but you've got to use it as opposed to letting it use you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You can't just, sometimes I see that people become just too into the toys,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're just like, or have to be on the latest and greatest thing, and they just get too involved in the tech, right? And it's you can't. I don't know. I don't think you can do that. I mean, to me, yeah, you need to use it as a tool for your own work, for your creativity, and not get too, I don't know, personally, I can't get sucked down that rabbit hole, or I won't, I won't concentrate on what I need to concentrate, which is making music.
Yeah, music comes first. All right, David Bowie once said, aging is an extraordinary process whereby you become the person you always should have been. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think, it's interesting talking to some of my contemporaries where there is this place you get to after a certain age, like mid 50s or something,
Yeah.
where you just don't give a shit.
Yeah, I'm already there.
Like,
I love it.
yeah, I don't care what I don't care what people think of me. This is it, right? And my impression of the world, if they like me, everybody can't love you, wwhatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you get rid of all that stuff, because I see, my kids sometimes get, as teenagers get wrapped up in it. That's part of being a teenager, right? And
Right.
what other kids think of you, and how you appear to the world. And I get that, we all go through that kind of thing, but you've got to rip all that stuff away to like see who you really are. And
Yeah.
in some ways, I feel like I've always been the same person, but I've been carrying around a load of bricks.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And now I just got rid of the bricks, and don't care. And I think that's very true about, after you get enough experience and you've seen enough things happen and enough things repeat in history, and like,
You see the patterns.
Well,
Yeah, actually, from what you're saying, we live out here in the desert, and the other day I saw on our Ring camera that there were some Jehovah Witnesses coming, knocking upon our door, and I'm to the point where I don't care anymore. So I went out there, bare feet, pajamas, my hair sticking up, and I was like, "What's up, guys?" Because I figure, you know what? I figure, look, everybody's got their beliefs, they got their differences. The world is such a disaster. I'm just going to be cool with everybody and show them that I don't care, and we have more in common than different.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I've got a Philip Glass quote. This is the last one. Philip Glass, and you actually had your first studio in Philip Glass's building, right?
Oh, I did.
Yeah. He once said the point of writing music and experiencing music isn't to make people comfortable necessarily.
Not necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain things that are meant to be cheesecake, right?
Right, right.
Of course. And there's certain things that are meant to be steak or, if you're a vegetarian, choose your,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some things are meant to make you think,
Yeah.
and I think, how can I put this? Just, yes, sometimes music makes you want to work at something.
Yeah.
And that's fine, and sometimes, and not everybody's going to get that, and they're not going to see what sort of message might be in something. Uh, the other night at our show, I had an idea and I sprung on Gail.
Yeah.
I said, given the state of all that's been going on around us, I said, we got to say a little something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Gail and I did a little snippet of "This Is Not America."
Oh, perfect.
Right? And I'm thinking, and from the reaction, I can tell, a lot of people they get it, but I'm sure some people don't get it. They're just like, cool, America. Yeah, America. I'm sure of that, right? And a lot of times these things, and this is a tiny little example, right, that I'm making here, but you have to be open to that, to be ready for that, and for any kind of challenge that music might give you. And there's plenty of things where I listen to them now and go, oh God, now I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I understand it. Now it's like, 20 years ago, I was all hung up on the beat.
Right. Right.
Or whatever. I was all hung up on the harmony. And now, oh boy, now I get it. So I understand that. And I'm not meaning that as a put down, but it's just like,
no,
you need to be at a place where you're receptive to whatever message this artist might be trying to put out.
Right, and I think that changes as you get older, especially as I get older, and I look at David Bowie's lyrics. Maybe I didn't get this song when I was 18 in 1988, but now I'm like, oh, I see what he means.
Right. Well, I just saw it this morning. The line in Life on Mars that says, "Lawman beating down the wrong guy." Well, hello.
Yep, there we go.
Hello.
Damn.
Right. Like, and how old was he when he wrote that?
Hey,
like,
and
sometimes some of these guys, I don't know how they do it. They have this outlook that is way beyond their years. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, and these guys that were so prolific, I find myself, they're still releasing Bowie and Prince stuff now that we haven't heard, and these guys were so prolific and so ahead of their time, and they're saying messages that mean more today than when they recorded them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, what can I help you promote? I saw on your Instagram today you're going to do some more 10-year anniversary of Bowie's passing shows. Is there more in New York in March?
Not that I know of. Yeah, I'm going to go to Dublin and do something there, I think, at the end of February with a couple of my cohorts. But after that, I don't think, like, the group we assemble for January, every January, is only then, because that's the only time we can get all those folks together, because, right about now, like the second or third week of January, like people are already spinning off into their lives, and already I know 2 people are off traveling to do work. And so that's the only time we can get that gang together.
Right. So that's every January. And what else do you have coming up recording wise or live that people can look forward to?
Oh, well, let's see. I'm currently in the middle of going back to France, actually. And going back to my connection, Mark, who still I work with 20, 30 years later, I am in the middle of producing a band called Madeline Keys, who are kind of like, I don't want to say they're prog, and I don't want to say they're rock, and I don't want to say they're pop, but I want to say all those things at the same time. And it's a quartet, and they're amazing players. And we went to Corsica to record them, which was Amazing experience. I'd never been to Corsica. I knew where it was, but I'd never been there.
And you
And
liked
it
it?
was, I'm ready to move there.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. I'm just like, it's beautiful. It's a little raw in the sense of undeveloped,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is great. And I don't know, it's wonderful. Just wonderful little, switch from, you know, society.
Yeah.
So I'm in the middle of doing that, and I'm going to start mixing it. And I have a couple of little things are popping up, but I'm not sure about yet where they're going. And I've also been playing with this London band called Killer Star.
Ooh, named after
And
the Bowie song, right?
yes, yes, and that has a couple of our little cohorts in it as well. And this is the third year we do a run of shows at the 100 Club in London and doing that, as well as we just finished a new album. So there's that. And then I'm not sure. Things tend to just pop up, and that's how it goes.
Is the best way to keep up with what you're doing Instagram? That seems to be what it is from what I see.
Yeah, it's Instagram or Facebook. Yeah, generally seems to be the way. Although honestly, I'm a little lazy about posting. But
So if somebody out there wants to hire you for any of your many talents, is your website the best place to go?
yeah, or Instagram or Facebook, either any of those ways. Yeah, there's we're all easy enough to find at this point, aren't we?
Right. And what in your website is Mark Plati with a little hyphen in between?
Yes, exactly. .com.
All right, man. Well, listen, thanks for taking all this time to talk to me today. And I would love to do
No
this
worries.
again, maybe 6 months from now, because I only got through about half of my questions. Would you be into that?
Well, yeah, by then I can, I'll get my breath back, I'm sure. Yeah.
All right, man. Have a great day. Good to talk to you.
Groovy. Okay, see you, man.
Very serious question. In all your travels, Mark, who makes the best espresso in the world? And I personally blame Tony Levin for getting me hooked to espresso.
I believe that. I just looked at his page because it's funny. I just connected Henry Hay, who's the keyboard player. He was the musical director of David's last project, Lazarus. He is a big espresso head. You should see the rig he's got. He's got a serious rig. And so then I said, well, hey, check out, because Tony Levin's got a page on his website devoted to like espresso.
Dude, this is how serious. I've got to back up and
Yes.
tell you. Tony gave me the Cafe Crim, which is this giant
really?
espresso rig that before Starbucks was huge, he toured the world with people like Peter Gabriel and would make people espresso. So he tells me the best espresso in the world is in Italy. Would you disagree? And do you have any other favorite ones?
Well, I'd agree just because you're in Italy.
That's a great question. That's a great answer.
And I don't want to say that like to, but part of all this stuff is location,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
like if you're in France and you're eating amazing cheese and the wine is killer, that's all true. But you're in France, you're like, whoa, and I don't know, man, having an espresso in Rome is just, it's like the greatest thing in the world.
It's got to be.
And yes, and the coffee's fantastic because, it's religion to them.
Yes.
It has to be. It's like mozzarella. Like you can, you get better mozzarella in the supermarket in Italy than you would get anywhere here in a supermarket. Okay, which is not as good as what you get in a restaurant. It just, it's amazing to me. Like, but it's like France in the sense of national pride in
Yeah.
cuisine, like, and you know, and for the first time I went to Italy, geez, after that I couldn't, like, I can't go to an Italian restaurant here. It just doesn't work. Like now, when you know, once the secret's out, it's like, oh man, well, there you go, that's over. Because there's just this level is it's you know, and the coffee and I don't know, maybe the coffee was better in Naples. Coffee in Naples was wicked. God, both these places, but you know, it's but they have a handle on coffee, no doubt. I would have to agree with him. But I now I have to ask him, like, okay, where? where in Italy are we talking about? You know, because you know, and I would defer to him because he's obviously like, you know, I don't have an espresso machine because I'd be glued to the thing 24/7.
Oh God.
Like I only go out for coffee. I do, and I have a couple places in my neighborhood that are good at it. But if I had an espresso machine, I'd no, forget it.
You wouldn't still be around. Yeah.
But I got to ask him. All right, where in Italy? You know the spot. Because next time I go, which I hope that happens, I will hit it.
All right. When you do find out, I demand a photo.
Absolutely.